It's just mind-blowing how quickly things are moving in the tech world, especially with artificial
It
intelligence.
really is. The pace is incredible.
And when you really think about it, what's fueling all that processing power? It's the underlying memory and storage solutions. Absolutely fundamental.
Couldn't agree more. They're the bedrock.
So for this deep dive, you pointed us towards something really interesting. The recent earnings calls from two of the giants in the memory game, Micron Technology and SK Hynix.
Exactly. We've got the transcripts right here. Micron's from their Q2 2025 call and SK Hynix's Q4 2024 discussion.
Oh, okay.
These are like getting a peek behind the curtain straight into the strategies of the folks steering these massive global players.
Precisely. And for you listening, our mission today is to cut through any financial jargon and really dig out the core insights about where the memory market stands right now and, more importantly, where it's heading.
Mhm.
We're talking about the big trends, the key challenges they're facing, and, of course, the exciting opportunities, especially with AI, completely reshaping the landscape.
Yeah, AI is the big story here.
We know you want to get up to speed on this without feeling like you're drowning in data, so let's jump right in. Okay, so to start, let's unpack this. Both Micron and SK Hynix reported some truly significant revenue numbers.
They certainly did. I mean, really strong numbers. Micron announced $8.1 billion in revenue for their Q2 of 2025.
Wow, $8.1 billion.
Yeah, which is a substantial 38% increase compared to the same period last
Yeah,
year.
38%. Okay.
And SK Hynix. Their Q4 2024 revenue reached a staggering KRW 19.77 trillion.
That sounds like a lot of one.
It translates to an even more impressive 75% jump year over year. These aren't just incremental gains. We're talking about major growth here.
But it sounds like the demand isn't exactly the same across the board, is it? There's a bit of a mixed picture in different parts of the tech market.
That's a critical observation, yeah. Both companies emphasized exceptionally strong demand related to AI memory and the ongoing build-out of data centers. That part is booming.
Right, the AI side.
But the recovery in consumer electronics, things like PCs and smartphones, well, that's progressing at a slower rate.
Which makes sense, right? Everyone's talking about these powerful AI systems, but maybe people are holding on to their current phones or laptops a little longer.
Could be.
And SK Hynix actually used a really interesting term to describe this. Polarization.
Yes, they did.
Mm.
They noted a distinct polarization in the memory market demand. What they're seeing is that the demand is really concentrating on these high-performance products, the ones essential for AI applications. It's not a uniform level of demand across all the different types of memory they produce. It's quite focused.
So looking forward, what kind of overall growth are they anticipating for the rest of the year in terms of, bits?
Right. Bit demand growth.
Right.
Micron is forecasting mid to high teens percentage growth for DRAM bits for the calendar year 2025.
Mid to high teens for DRAM.
And low double digits for NAND.
Okay.
SK Hynix has very similar expectations, actually, projecting mid to high teens for DRAM and low teens for NAND.
So pretty aligned there.
Yeah, it really signals a continuing strong appetite for memory, especially for that faster DRAM.
And when do they anticipate things will start to balance out more, supply versus demand?
The general feeling seems to be that we should see gradually improving conditions in the balance between supply and demand as we move into the latter half of 2025.
Second half. Okay.
This is a key factor because it directly influences pricing and, well, the overall health of the market.
Okay, so the headline here really does seem to be AI. And when we talk about memory for artificial intelligence, one particular type keeps coming up. High bandwidth memory, or HBM.
Exactly. HBM is rapidly becoming a primary driver of growth for both Micron and SK Hynix. It's a specialized kind of memory architecture,
Right.
designed to deliver the massive data transfer speeds that those powerful AI processors need to operate efficiently.
It's like the superhighway for AI data, isn't it?
That's a great analogy. Think of regular memory like a narrow country road. HBM, on the other hand, is like that multi-lane superhighway specifically built for massive amounts of data to travel incredibly quickly.
Exactly what these powerful AI brains need.
Precisely.
The financial numbers they're talking about when it comes to HBM are pretty astounding.
These certainly are. Micron's revenue from HBM jumped by more than 50% just in the last quarter, their Q2 of 2025.
50% sequentially. Wow.
Yeah, and it exceeded $1 billion for that single quarter.
$1 billion in HBM in one quarter.
And for SK Hynix, their total HBM sales in 2024 grew more than 4.5 times compared to the previous year.
4.5 times.
Yeah, and in the fourth quarter of 2024 alone, it accounted for over 40% of all their DRAM sales.
over 40%. That's a huge proportion.
It is. It shows you where the focus is.
And it sounds like the market for this high-performance memory is only going to get bigger.
It is. Micron actually increased their estimated total addressable market, TAM, for HBM in 2025.
Right.
They're now estimating it at over $35 billion.
$35 billion. That represents a massive opportunity for these companies.
Huge.
It's probably no surprise then that both companies are finding it difficult to keep up with the current level of demand.
Precisely. Yeah, that came through loud and clear. Both Micron and SK Hynix have indicated that they have essentially sold out of their HBM production for the entirety of 2025.
The whole year. Already.
Basically, yeah.
Yeah.
Micron is already engaging in discussions with customers about their needs for 2026.
So planning way ahead.
And SK Hynix has even started talking about their potential supply volumes for 2026. This early engagement really highlights just how intense the demand is.
Beyond just the sheer volume, it sounds like there's a lot of really cutting-edge innovation happening in the HBM technology itself.
Absolutely. It's not just about quantity, it's quality and advancement too. Let's look at some of the specifics. Micron is emphasizing its leadership with its 1-beta DRAM technology and the recent introduction of its 1-gamma node, which uses EUV lithography.
Okay, EUV, that's the advanced lithography technique. Right?
Exactly. It's a way of etching these incredibly tiny memory circuits, allowing them to pack more performance into the same physical space. And this new 1-gamma node offers some impressive improvements, like 20% lower power consumption, 15% better performance, and over 30% improvement in bit density compared to their 1-beta technology.
Those are some pretty significant leaps forward. What about their specific HBM products that are using these advancements?
Well, Micron's HBM3E is a particularly noteworthy product. They're claiming it delivers a 30% reduction in power usage compared to competing products.
30% is a lot in this space.
It really is.
Yeah.
And even more impressively, their 12-high version of HBM3E, stacking 12 DRAM dies,
Right.
has a 20% power advantage over competing 8-high products while also offering 50% greater capacity.
So more capacity and less power. That's a win-win.
Absolutely. They've already started volume production of this 12-high version, and they anticipate it will constitute the majority of their HBM shipments in the second half of 2025.
SK Hynix isn't just standing by, are they? They're also pushing the boundaries of HBM.
Not at all. It's a real race.
Yeah.
They commence shipping their HBM3E 12-high products in the fourth quarter of 2024, right on schedule. And they've even developed the industry's very first HBM3E 16-high product.
16 high. Wow.
Yeah, stacking even higher. They're projecting that their 12-high products will account for more than half of their total HBM3E shipments in the first half of 2025. So, yeah, it's a very dynamic and competitive area.
And they're already looking beyond HBM3E, right? I'm hearing about HBM4 on the horizon.
Yes, the next generation. Both companies are expressing a lot of excitement about HBM4.
What are they saying about it?
Micron expects it to start ramping up in volume in calendar year 2026 and is saying it will provide over a 60% increase in bandwidth compared to HBM3E.
60% more bandwidth. That's another huge jump.
It is. And SK Hynix is aiming to complete the development of their HBM4 12-high product in the second half of 2025.
Okay. Development next year.
With shipments anticipated in the second half of 2026. They also have plans for an even denser HBM4 16-high version down the road.
What's interesting is that SK Hynix mentioned they're going to be working with another company for part of their HBM4 production.
That's right. That caught my eye, too. For their HBM4, SK Hynix is planning to utilize logic foundries, and they specifically named TSMC for the base die.
Using TSMC for the base? Why?
This collaboration is intended to boost the performance and power efficiency of their next generation of HBM. It involves putting more logic functionality onto that base layer.
Yeah, okay.
It really highlights the increasing complexity involved and, the need for specialized expertise in different areas of chip manufacturing. You can't do it all yourself anymore.
Micron brought up something about the silicon intensity of HBM having an impact on the supply of their other DRAM products. What exactly did they mean by that?
This is a really important point to understand the bigger picture, kind of the ripple effects. Micron explained that producing HBM requires significantly more raw silicon wafer area to achieve the same number of gigabits compared to standard DRAM, like DDR5.
How much more silicon?
They specifically mentioned that their HBM3E uses 3 times the amount of silicon wafer area as their standard DDR5 for the same bit output.
3?
Yeah. And looking ahead to their enhanced HBM4E, they anticipate this trade ratio will climb to over 4-to-1.
Wow. 4 times the silicon.
So this increased silicon intensity Means that as they dedicate more and more of their advanced manufacturing capacity to producing HBM to meet that incredible AI demand, it naturally limits the amount of non-HBM DRAM they can produce using those same leading-edge technologies.
So essentially, the more HBM they're making, the less of the regular advanced DRAM might be available from those same advanced lines.
Exactly. It's a direct trade-off driven by the overwhelming demand for HBM. It puts a squeeze on other advanced DRAM supply.
Which means that they need more overall capacity, right?
Precisely. To address the overall need for more memory production, both companies are investing heavily in expanding their manufacturing capabilities.
We definitely heard about some pretty significant investment plans.
Yes, Micron is making substantial investments in increasing their HBM production capacity. That includes a brand new advanced packaging facility in Singapore,
In Singapore, okay.
which is slated to come online in calendar year 2027. They're also expanding their capacity within their existing manufacturing sites.
And SK Hynix?
They're also increasing their capital expenditure, with the primary focus being on their HBM investments and the construction of new fabrication plants, specifically the M15X fab and the big Yongin facility cluster.
These are major long-term investments.
Absolutely. These large-scale investments clearly indicate a long-term commitment to meeting the growing demand for these high-performance memory solutions, especially for AI.
Okay, let's shift gears slightly. Beyond HBM, the data center is obviously a massive consumer of memory and storage. What insights did these earnings calls give us about the demand in that sector?
Right. It's not just HBM in the data center. The robust demand for DRAM there isn't limited to HBM. Both Micron and SK Hynix are seeing strong demand for high-capacity DIMMs.
The standard RAM sticks for servers.
Exactly. Those sticks of RAM you often see in servers, but in very high capacities now. And also for low-power LP DRAM.
Low-powered DRAM in servers. That's interesting.
It is. And interestingly, Micron highlighted that they are currently the sole company shipping LP DRAM into data centers in significant volumes.
Really? The only one?
In high volume, yeah. And they are projecting multi-billion-dollar revenues in their fiscal year 2025 just from these high-capacity DDR5 DIMMs and their low-power DRAM offerings combined.
Multi-billion dollars just from those two categories in the data center.
Mm-hmm.
They even collaborated with NVIDIA on a specific type of memory module for servers, right?
Yes, that was the LPSO DIMM, or SOM module, developed in partnership with NVIDIA.
Some.
Yeah. For those who might not be familiar, SODIMM is usually the smaller type of memory module you find in laptops.
Right.
This low-power version, SOM, was specifically designed for easier server manufacturing and servicing. Micron believes this will lead to wider adoption of low-power DRAM in server systems. Easier to build, easier to maintain.
Okay. What about the storage side of things in data centers with NAND flash memory used in solid-state drives, SSDs? How's that looking?
Micron noted that the demand for NAND in data centers experienced some moderation in their second fiscal quarter.
It's a bit of a slowdown.
Yeah, apparently due to adjustments in customer inventory levels, but they are anticipating a return to growth in this area.
Okay, so a temporary dip.
Seems like it. They also mentioned achieving a record-high market share in data center SSDs in the fourth calendar quarter of 2024.
Record share, that's good for them.
Definitely. Furthermore, Micron highlighted that their G8 QLC NAND,
QLC being the higher density NAND.
exactly, quad-level cell NAND for higher storage density. Their G8 QLC has been qualified for use by Pure Storage, a major storage vendor.
Ah, a big design win.
Yeah. And they expect to increase their market share in data center NAND in calendar year 2025, projecting multi-billion-dollar revenue there as well.
It sounds like SK Hynix is also performing well in the data center NAND market.
Absolutely. SK Hynix recorded increased sales of enterprise SSDs, which significantly contributed to their NAND division achieving profitability in 2024. That was a big turnaround for them.
NAND profitability is key.
Huge. And it came along with record annual revenue and operating income for the NAND business. They've also launched high-density QLC-based enterprise SSDs, offering capacities like 61 terabytes and even 122 terabytes.
122 terabytes in one SSD.
Wow. Yeah, demonstrating their focus on meeting the evolving high-capacity storage needs of data centers.
Shifting our focus now to the more consumer-facing markets like personal computers and mobile phones, what's the outlook there according to Micron and SK Hynix?
Okay, PCs. Micron is forecasting a mid-single-digit % growth in PC unit sales for the calendar year 2025.
Mid-single digits, so modest growth.
Relatively modest, yeah. They believe this growth will be driven by two main factors. the upcoming end-of-life support for Windows 10,
Right, the Windows 10 refresh cycle.
which will likely spur some upgrades, and the increasing adoption of AI PCs.
AI PCs needing more memory.
Exactly. These AI PCs are expected to require significantly higher amounts of DRAM, typically 16 gigabytes or more, compared to maybe 8 GB being standard before.
So even in the PC market, the rise of AI is having a direct impact on the memory requirements.
Definitely. More content per box. To cater to this trend, Micron is already providing samples of their 16 GB DDR5 products based on their new 1-gamma technology to PC manufacturers.
Getting ready for those AI PCs.
And they've also introduced new Gen 9-based high-performance SSDs specifically for the client PC market.
What about smartphones? That's another huge market for memory and storage.
For smartphones, both Micron and SK Hynix are anticipating low single-digit percentage growth in smartphone unit volumes for the calendar year 2025.
Low single digits. Similar to PCs then, fairly slow growth overall.
Yeah, similar to the growth rate SK Hynix saw last year. However, the key trend here, again, is the increasing amount of DRAM being included in flagship smartphones that have AI capabilities.
More RAM in phones too.
Yes, many are now featuring 12 gigabytes of DRAM or even more. Micron's LP5X DRAM, that's the low-power type for mobile, is helping to improve the performance of these AI features in smartphones.
It sounds like Micron is getting some of their memory chips into some of the leading smartphone models.
Yes, they highlighted that their LP5X DRAM and their UFS 4.0 NAND flash storage are being used in the Samsung Galaxy S25 series.
The S25, okay.
UFS, for context, is Universal Flash Storage, the standard for high-performance flash in mobile.
Right.
And Micron is also sampling the industry's first mobile G9 managed NAND-based UFS 4.1 solution. So pushing the envelope on mobile storage speed too.
SK Hynix also sees AI as a significant driver in the mobile device space.
Absolutely. They are projecting that the penetration of AI-enabled PCs could reach 30 to 40%.
30 to 40% of PCs being AI capable.
That's their projection, yeah, which will drive greater adoption of laptops with 16 gigabytes or more of DRAM.
Okay.
Similarly, they anticipate that around 30% of smartphones will have AI capabilities,
30% for phones too.
leading to increased demand for high-performance mobile memory like LPDDR5X and even LPDDR5T, which are faster and more power-efficient versions of LP DRAM.
Got it.
They also noted that consumer subsidy programs in China for smartphones and tablets are expected to provide a positive boost to overall demand in that region.
Government stimulus potentially helping there.
Could be a factor, yeah.
Let's briefly touch on some of the other markets that these companies serve, such as the automotive and embedded system sectors. What's happening there?
Micron mentioned that the automotive sector is currently in the later stages of adjusting its inventory levels, so maybe some near-term softness still working through.
Okay, inventory burn-off.
But the long-term outlook for memory and storage content per vehicle is very positive.
Why is that?
It's driven by the increasing integration of AI-powered infotainment systems and advanced driver assistance features, AD.
More smarts in the car need more memory.
Exactly. They even pointed out that cutting-edge robo-taxi platforms can contain significantly more DRAM, upwards of 200 gigabytes per vehicle.
200 gigabytes, that's a massive jump in memory compared to what you'd find in a typical car today.
It is indeed a huge leap, and Micron is positioning itself to capitalize on this growth.
How so?
They announced that their industry-first automotive LP5X DRAM, supporting speeds of 9.6 gigabits per second, is now ready for production.
Okay, high-speed RAM for cars.
Yep. And additionally, their 4-to-150 SSD became the very first enterprise-grade SSD to be qualified for automotive applications. Robust storage for harsh environments.
Enterprise-grade for cars. Okay, that makes sense given the demands.
Yeah, these developments really showcase their commitment to meeting the demanding requirements of the automotive industry.
Now, let's shift our focus a bit and discuss how Micron and SK Hynix are managing their supply chains and their manufacturing strategies in this rapidly evolving market. What's the plan on the supply side?
Okay, supply strategy. Micron anticipates that their own supply growth in calendar year 2025 will be lower than the overall industry demand growth for both DRAM and NAND.
Less supply growth than demand growth.
That's their expectation. As a result of this, they expect their inventory levels, measured in days of supply, to decline throughout the year, supply tightening up.
Okay, so inventory's coming down.
Right. They also stated their intention to maintain their current share of the market for both DRAM and NAND, not necessarily trying to grab huge share, but hold their position while supply tightens.
They also mentioned some interesting approaches to their NAND flash memory production, Something about underutilization.
Yes, that was quite interesting.
Mm.
Micron is currently operating their NAND flash fabrication facilities at less than full capacity. They're not running them full out.
Okay. Why?
Their plan is to strategically repurpose some of this underutilized equipment for cost-effective upgrades, converting lines to produce more advanced memory nodes instead.
Ah, reusing equipment for upgrades? Capital efficiency.
Exactly. They said this approach will lead to a structural reduction of their overall NAND wafer production capacity by more than 10% by the end of their fiscal year 2025, compared to fiscal 24 levels.
So actually reducing overall NAND capacity.
Seems like a deliberate move towards maybe a more demand-driven, value-focused approach in their NAND business, rather than just chasing volume.
SK Hynix also talked about carefully managing their supply in response to the changing demand, right? Especially between new and old tech.
Very much so. SK Hynix is anticipating tight supply conditions for high-performance DRAM products like HBM and the latest generation DDR5 memory because of that strong surge in demand we talked about.
Right, the AI stuff.
But conversely, they expect the demand for older legacy products like DDR4 and LPDDR4 to decline at a faster pace.
So managing that transition.
Exactly. In response, they're actively reducing their production of these legacy products and increasing their production of more advanced memory using their leading-edge manufacturing processes, like their 1A nanometer process for DDR5 and LPDDR5.
Shifting production focus.
They are projecting that the revenue share from these legacy products will drop significantly from around 20% in 2024 down to single digits in 2025.
Wow, a big shift away from legacy.
Yeah, it clearly demonstrates their strategic shift towards the higher value, high performance segments of the market, following the money, essentially.
And they have some significant expansions of their manufacturing capabilities underway to support this.
Absolutely, major fab projects. SK Hynix's new M15X fabrication facility located in Cheongju is on track to open in the fourth quarter of 2025.
M15X coming online soon.
Yeah. They're also commencing construction on their new fabrication plant cluster in Yongin this year, with the goal of it being operational by the second quarter of 2027. That's a massive long-term project.
Brilliant, okay.
Furthermore, they have secured an agreement for advanced packaging investments in Indiana under the U.S. GPS Act.
Ah, using the GPS Act funding.
Highlighting their commitment to expanding their presence and capabilities in the United States as well, building more resilient supply chains, perhaps.
Let's delve into the financial aspects a bit more. How did both companies perform recently, and what kind of financial outlook are they providing?
Okay, financials. Micron's earnings per share, EPS, for their second fiscal quarter of 2025 actually exceeded their own projections.
Better than expected.
Yeah, with a healthy gross profit margin of 37.9%.
Melon margin.
For their upcoming third fiscal quarter of 2025, they are forecasting record revenue in the range of $8.8 billion plus or minus $200 million.
Record revenue forecast, okay.
But interestingly, they are anticipating a slightly lower gross margin sequentially, around 36.5% plus or minus percent.
Margin dipping slightly despite record revenue. Why?
They attribute this to higher sales volumes in consumer-oriented products, which typically carry lower margins than, say, HBM or high-end server DRAM.
Ah, the product mix effect.
Exactly. And also the continued underutilization costs associated with their NAND flash manufacturing we discussed.
Okay.
However, they do expect their gross margins to improve somewhat again in their fourth fiscal quarter.
SK Hynix reported some really impressive profitability numbers for their most recent quarter.
They did. Extremely strong. For the fourth quarter of 2024, SK Hynix reported an operating profit margin of 41%.
41% operating margin.
And a net profit margin that was also at 41%. Just huge profitability.
Incredible numbers.
Their total consolidated revenue for the entire year of 2024 actually surpassed their previous record that was set back in 2022. So a record year overall.
Wow. What about their outlook?
Looking ahead to the first quarter of 2025, they are anticipating a low-teen percentage sequential decrease in their DRAM bit shipments.
Down slightly in Q1.
And a high-teen percentage decrease in their NAND shipments. They say this is due to typical seasonal patterns and some ongoing adjustments in customer inventory.
So some seasonality expected.
Right. But crucially, they are forecasting that their revenue from HBM products will grow by over 100% in 2025 compared to 2024.
HBM revenue doubling year over year.
At least doubling, yeah. Really underscoring the significant financial impact of AI memory on their business.
What about their capital expenditure plans? How much are they planning to invest in the future? CapEx outlook.
Micron's capital spending plan remains consistent at approximately $14 billion for their fiscal year 2025.
$14 billion, still a big number.
Oh, yeah. A significant portion of this investment is specifically allocated for expanding their HBM production capacity, constructing new facilities like the one in Singapore, and for ongoing research and development efforts.
And SK Hynix's spending plans.
SK Hynix is planning a slight increase in their overall investment in 2025 compared to 2024, with the primary focus, again, being on their HBM capabilities and expanding their broader infrastructure, like those new fabs.
So both investing heavily, especially in HBM and future tech.
Absolutely. These sustained high levels of investment by both companies really highlight the confidence they have in the long-term growth of the memory market, particularly driven by the demand from artificial intelligence.
Finally, let's touch on the competitive landscape. How do Micron and SK Hynix view their position in the current market? How are they feeling competitively?
Micron stated that they believe they are currently in their strongest competitive position in their history.
Strong words.
Yeah, quite confident, emphasizing the market share gains they have achieved in product categories that offer higher profit margins, like some of those data center products and HBM.
And SK Hynix.
SK Hynix highlighted their leadership in the critical area of AI memory technology, specifically pointing out that they were the first to supply both the 8-high and 12-high versions of their advanced HBM3E products, really leaning into that first-mover advantage in HBM3E.
Playing to their strength there.
Mm-hmm.
The emergence and growth of Chinese memory companies is often a topic of discussion in the industry. What did Micron and SK Hynix have to say about that? Any comments on competition from China?
Yeah, that came up on the SK Hynix call. They acknowledged the increased supply of more mature legacy DRAM products coming from Chinese manufacturers. So they see them competing more on the older tech.
Okay, in legacy DRAM.
Right.
Right.
However, SK Hynix believes that their own technology remains significantly ahead, particularly in the more advanced memory nodes like DDR5 and especially HBM.
A big tech gap still.
That's their view. They also pointed to the ongoing trade and technology restrictions facing Chinese companies, which creates uncertainties for their ability to develop and produce leading-edge technologies domestically.
The restrictions are a factor.
Yeah. This suggests that while Chinese companies are certainly a factor in the overall memory market, especially legacy, the established leaders like Micron and SK Hynix feel they maintain a considerable technological advantage, particularly in the crucial high-performance segments that are driving current growth and profitability.
Okay, this has been a really in-depth and comprehensive exploration of the memory market as seen through the lens of these two major industry players, Micron and SK Hynix. Let's try and summarize the key takeaways for our listener. What really stands out?
Well, I think the most significant takeaway is the undeniable and, frankly, powerful influence of the artificial intelligence boom on the entire memory industry.
AI is number one.
Absolutely. With a particularly explosive demand for high bandwidth memory, HBM, that's really reshaping everything.
Right.
We're also observing a market with mixed dynamics.
Right.
Characterized by that super strong demand for AI and data center applications, contrasting with the consumer market PCs and phones that is showing initial signs of recovery, but it's still slower.
The polarization idea again?
Exactly. Both Micron and SK Hynix are making substantial and strategic investments in expanding their HBM production capacity and pushing the boundaries of memory technology itself. HBM4, advanced nodes, packaging.
Big bets on the future.
Huge bets.
Yeah.
And overall, I think there's a sense of cautious optimism for improved market conditions and increased profitability, particularly in the second half of 2025, as those dynamics of supply and demand continue to evolve, likely tightening up.
It truly feels like the memory industry is at a really fascinating and pivotal moment, largely propelled by the seemingly insatiable appetite of AI for more and faster memory.
Absolutely. Couldn't have said it better. It's a critical inflection point.
Which leads to a really interesting question for you listening to mull over. Given this intense focus and the massive investments being poured into HBM just to feed these incredibly powerful AI processors, what do you think might be the next major bottleneck or perhaps the next significant opportunity within the broader AI infrastructure ecosystem?
Yeah, that's a great question. If HBM supply starts catching up, where does the constraint move next?
Exactly. Think beyond just the memory chips themselves. Consider the entire data pipeline: networking, interconnects, power, cooling, software optimization, all the supporting technologies that enable AI to function at scale. Where's the next challenge?
Definitely some food for thought there.
Indeed. Thanks for taking that deep dive with us today into the world of Micron and SK Hynix.
My pleasure. It's a fascinating space right now.
We encourage you all to stay curious and perhaps explore further into the fascinating world of memory technology and its absolutely critical role in shaping the future of artificial intelligence. Until our next deep dive.